Believer Part 2. Holy shit. So basically the ending of Part 1 is like they're in a snow cabin or whatever like that and you hear the gunshot go off. Now, here's the thing about Part 2. Every part of the story leads up to that point from the time that Mr. Lee escaped, you know what I'm saying, with the dog and the Lolo twins. We find out he's not Mr. Lee, but I'm explaining that in a minute. Rack ends up finding a tracking device on his dog. It tosses over by an ATM machine, right? Captain Joe ends up getting the note or whatever by the ATM machine, so we're not even sure what the letter said. Now, Rack with the Lolo twins got this plan, right? Now, we found out the police then seized over like $20 billion worth of the Laika stuff. The thing is, he knows that Brian's got different warehouses or whatever like that to get a Laika. So basically, he's going to get in contact with these warehouses and will try to make the shit on his own again. The thing is, Brian's not in jail yet. He's still in like, critical condition in the hospital or whatever like that. Then, his little sidekicks come in there, say they break him out, get him up out of there. Now, Brian back on the streets, but he's in a fucking wheelchair, so he's pretty much crippled. Then we found out about this crazy-ass chick named Cheon. Cheon hears about the siege of the Laika or whatever like that. She's all the way in China, so now she got to travel all the way over there to the squad, to figure out what the fuck is going on. Rake and the Lolo twins end up finding one of the warehouses, right? So they like, oh shit, they found some Laika over there, and they actually found the equipment to actually make it or whatever like that. But all of a sudden, they thought the people that was at the warehouse that disappeared, but them niggas is still there. So they thought they were stealing it, but actually they said, look, we could just make it right here. So basically he helps these dudes out because he said he could help them make like twice as much as they was going to make anyway. They get it popping, everything's ready to go, and then all of a sudden, these two daggone buses would come up beside, you know what I'm saying? It's Cheon and the gang, and they end up lacing everybody except for daggone Laika and the Lolo twins. The Lolo twins actually disappeared somehow, and they basically end up kidnapping Rake. Now, at the same time, Detective Joe didn't want to give the mission, even though his superiors was like, yo, they caught Mr. Lee, da-da-da, even though that wasn't Mr. Lee, it was obviously Brian. He's getting all these clues about these warehouses and whatnot. He didn't check like two of them, nothing happening. He checks the third one with his partner, whatever like that, and he finds out, oh, the people at this warehouse, whatever like that. He sees some dead bodies and shit. This nigga Joe don't want to wait for backup, though. I'm like, dude, his partner is like, yo, it could be about 20, 30 motherfuckers in there. It's just me and you. He's like, fuck that, we ain't letting them get away. I'm like, nigga. So then they go in, guns are blazing, they take out a couple of niggas. The bottom line is, his partner ends up getting done deal, blasted back with a shotgun, and he's done deal. It's over. Cheon, Rake, and the crew end up getting away. So now, not only does he get reprimanded by his officers or whatever like that, but he's also suspended for 6 months. Now, Cheon, when she came back, she first ended up getting this information from Brian to figure out where Rake was at to begin with, So they was, trying to get some things together, concoct some situations so that way he could pay her back the Laika that was, seized by the cops or whatnot. But Cheon is basically the cleanup crew, and she's crazy as fuck. So even though Joe's not supposed to be on assignment or whatever like that, he's still looking up leads and looking up clues and things. He's talking to this farmer guy. He gives him some clues about trying to figure out about who Mr. Lee is, you know what I'm saying? We had found out he was a school teacher that was living in Thailand at the point. So basically, he's going to make a trip to Thailand. The female officer tried to stop him or whatever like that, or tried to go with him, and he was like, nah, I'm going on my own. And then he just dips. Now, Cheon's got Rack, and at the same time, she's also got Brian or whatever like that. They all try to discuss this thing or whatever like that. Now, while Cheon's talking to her people, she said basically, once they get this shit popping, you know what I'm saying, we're going to dispose of both of them niggas. But the thing is, she don't know what Rack and the Brian are talking about. I'm explaining that in a minute. So they got like 4 different cars arranged or whatever like that. Cheon and Rack are riding in one car, and then the other 3 cars got Brian and a couple other niggas in them. They both end up going different directions. She ends up taking Rack to like this church or whatever like that. In the bottom of the church, they do all types of mix up, all types of coke, cooking up, you know what I'm saying, doing what they gotta do. Brian in the other car, so they basically going through the jungle and this, that, the third. You think of all these little twisted turns, you think to yourself, yo, they probably just fucked this nigga up. He's crippled in a wheelchair. What else is he gonna do? Then we find out he gets a phone call and he covers up the phone. Next thing you know, his peoples is coming through there, you know what I'm saying? They roughing shot, you know what I'm saying? There's all types of mayhem. They end up shooting up niggas and getting Brian up out of there. It's crazy. Now, you would think Brian would go straight to find their Rack, right? But nah, this is what he does. So Joe's in Thailand looking for Mr. Lee. He runs into this dude, this smiling ass dude. He's like, yeah, I can tell you where Mr. Lee is. He's in a certain area, this, that, the third. And he's got to make a phone call, right? Guess who he calls? Cheon. But Joe don't know that. He leads Joe into the house thinking that he's going to, fall for this trap, whatever like that. Joe pulls out the gun, was like, I ain't fall for this trap. But then the door opens. This nigga's already in the house. He's like, yeah, you ain't. Put your gun down, nigga. And they basically got him all tied up, wrapped up. He about to done deal Joe. And then all of a sudden, niggas start popping off. You're like, whose niggas is popping off? Turns out it's Brian and they boys popping off at everybody. So now Joe's thinking to himself like, well, why you keeping me alive? Well, apparently, this is all part of Rack's plan. See, Rack wants to keep him alive because he needs him face to face, but this is the plan that Rack had with Brian. See, Brian knew Cheon was going to finish off both of them niggas, right? So the thing is, while they were talking, they constructed this plan, and Brian had a cell phone taped to the bottom of his chair, undetected. That way, when shit jumped off, they knew each other's location, and they could be able to, talk to each other without alerting anybody else. And they knew when to follow through with each part of their plans. So now Brian and his crew ready to go get Rack and then finish off Cheon and shit, right? And now, let's get back to the Cheon story. Now, Rack has been pleading with Cheon the entire time, like, can I be able to talk to Mr. Lee? And she's like, oh my God, like, he's been a fucking running record and shit. Then she finally gets on the phone with Mr. Lee himself. Turns out, Mr. Lee is actually her dad. Then we get this backstory from like 12 years ago, right? How this dude named Jin came in this room or whatever like that, and then was about to finish off this nigga because I guess he was stacking money or hiding money or something like that. All of a sudden, Cheon comes out of nowhere or whatever like that. And then they got beef because she's jealous about something. And I'm like, why is she beefing with Jin? Turns out they're both brother and sister. He had threatened to kill her one time because she had went crazy. And guess what? She ends up killing that dude anyway, slicing his head off. And who saw it? Brian was peeking out the other side and shit. He was like, what the fuck? But what they both didn't know, Rack was there too. He was actually coming out the other side. So you think to yourself, how the fuck was he there at the same time this was going down? I'm gonna hit you with that in a minute. So while Cheon's talking to Mr. Lee, aka her dad, you know what I'm saying? The dad don't give a fuck about the Laika or whatever like that. Because bottom line is, he's just trying to live a regular life. But he was really trying to be a school teacher out in fucking Norway. But at first he was doing it in Thailand. Apparently he's staying out in Norway now. And he was teaching for like 30 years. Then we get another flashback about his daughter being like very unstable, you know what I'm saying? For PTSD, all type of shit. And her father gave her a lot of that because he used to beat the fuck out of her, yo. So at this point, she don't even think her father cares. So it gets to the point where she just starts beating up on Rack and just whipping his ass. Then all of a sudden, Brian and his crew come through there and they start wrecking shop. The Lolo twins are there, Joe's there. Like, it's crazy. They end up laying down murking niggas. And we get to this point where Cheon's about to finish off Rake. And then all of a sudden, Brian's girl pops out of nowhere and done deals her ass and she done deal. Now we get to the scene where Brian's talking all this plot or whatever like that. But now he's holding down Rake and the Lolo twins. They're like, what the fuck is going on? And this is a thing where Brian and Rake would talk about schemes or whatever like that. They were trying to out-scheme each other or whatever, but Brian got the upper hand on him. Joe can't do nothing about this shit. You gotta let it happen. He ends up burning one of the Lolo twins' leg, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like the flamethrower, the shit that happened to him on his back, but burns his leg and shit. And then he sends one of the other guards to put like some solvent in the other one's eyes and shit. I'm like, damn, now she's deaf and she can't see. But the reason Brian's keeping Rack alive is because, one, he does want him to fix some stuff, and two, he wants him to kill Mr. Lee. And see, now that he got Cheon's phone, he's able to, easier to be able to find the location. Next thing we see, Joe wakes up and he's in like fucking still in Thailand. He's talking to, the police chick that rocked with him, whatever like that, and just trying to make sure he's conscious. Bottom line is he's been knocked out for like 3 days. Then we go to Norway. Mr. Lee pops up, walks into his home. He goes down to his study, turns a light on, and Rake is right there just sitting there chilling. Now, the thing is, Rake got different reasons for wanting to meet Mr. Lee. It's not just because of the Laika. It's actually more than that. So in the last movie, they gave this flashback, right, about him and his parents getting on a boat or whatever like that, and his actual parents ended up dying on a banana boat, and he somehow was able to survive it. Well, it turns out Mr. Lee was the one that killed his fucking parents. So before Rake got there, he basically killed his entire family that was living out in Norway. And they were sitting down talking crazy, and all of a sudden, Mr. Lee tried to pull a gun out of a book or whatever like that, but Rake got to it first and done deal Mr. Lee. Now he's dead as shit. So now we get to the scene where we see Joe driving down, to the snowy ice caps back into that cabin that we was talking about at the end of the first movie. Now this time it's different. The dog comes out to greet him and stuff like that. The Lolo twins are walking around the other cabin, but now we realize that, one of them with their leg messed up and the other one can't see. Because we know they're both deaf already, but actually now we know what the extra extremities as because of the incidents that happened at the fucking church. So we get to the scene and Joe Rake about to get some coffee. They put their guns on the table and then this is what they talking about. So remember when I told you Rake found the tracker and the dog or whatever like that and tossed that joint? Well, you think to yourself, well, how did Joe know where to find Rake at this point? Well, Rake actually called him and let him know that he was there because he wanted to see him face to face. So Rake at this point felt like he's done everything he wanted to do in life and his life don't have no meaning no more except he's just there. The only reason he brought Joe to the cabin is because he wanted to ask him, like, what were my parents like? And I'm like, wait a minute, Joe knew Rake's parents? So they were talking, it got to a point where Rake was putting a hand on the gun, right? And then he pulls the gun up and then Joe ends up shooting him and Rake is done deal dead as shit. But the crazy thing is, Joe checked Rake's gun. It ain't had no bullets in it. He wanted him to kill him. Last thing we see is Joe walking out the cabin. He's like slow walking, trying to get back to his car. And all of a sudden, bang! Hit to the back of his head. He's dead as shit. The Lolo twin that could actually see was the one that shot him. And that's how the movie ends. I was like, what the fuck? I feel like I've been on a whole damn acid trip with these two movies. Man, this shit was crazy. Now I'm thinking to myself, all these niggas died because they were trying to make the Laika, but then it turns out to be even more specific reasons of why they wanted to meet Mr. Lee in the first place. For Rake, it was basically about revenge. For Joe, obviously, he was trying to put him away, but you know what I'm saying? It got to the point in his life where Mr. Lee wasn't even worried about this shit no more. He was just trying to live a regular, normal life. I mean, the dude was trying to be a school teacher for like 30 years in freaking Thailand. You know what I'm saying? All I can tell you is a lot of calamity, a lot of mayhem, and a lot of that good shit. Believer 2 on Netflix. Check it out.